You have a license?
Monsieur?
City Ordinance 47B prohibits the playing of any musical instrument in a public place for the purpose of commercial enterprise without a license.
I don't understand.
It is against the law for you to play your musical instrument.
The law?
What?
You say it's against the law?
Yes, unless you have a proper license.
What kind of license?
A license that permits the playing of any musical instrument in a public place for the purpose of commercial enterprise.
Commercial enterprise?
Yes. You play that thing and people give you the money.
People give the monkey the money.
It is a sin.
Oh, not at all, monsieur. I am a musician and the monkey is a businessman. He doesn't tell me what to play and I don't tell him what to do with his money.
Monsieur, don't try to be funny with me. He is your monkey, therefore it is your money.
He lives with me, but he is not my monkey. One day I came home and I found him sitting in the living room. I let him stay, but he pays for his own room and board.
Then the monkey is breaking the law.
But he doesn't play any musical instrument.
City Ordinance 132R prohibits the begging.
How do you know so much about city ordinances?
What sort of stupid question is that? Are you blind?
Yes.
Oh, I see, yes. Yes, of course. Well, you happen to be talking to a police officer. And because I expect to be transferred back to the detective division at any moment, I will let you off this time with just a warning.
Thank you, Monsieur Argent.
But you must get yourself a proper license.
First thing tomorrow.
Try to do something about your filthy monkey.
Hello, Mark. Do you have the license to crash the set, Mark? Yes, with your filthy Minki. Ladies and gentlemen, a fellow Pink Panther man. Ordinance 47534 states that you cannot play the music without the license. Do you have the license?
Yes!
This time I will let you off, but you must do something about your filthy Minki. I think we're catching up later on. There we go. Every week, the set gets bombed. What can we do? Bomb, bomb. But I was talking about the science of the tap here. What we have is, I'll get serious now. Okay, so what we've got is three things. Now, I started off with the sticks, and now I'm going to go across to brushes. Now, any excuse to play brushes, the reason being is because they don't have as much bounce as a normal pair of sticks. And so what happens is when you want to practice your rudiments and things and get started, and you need to develop your wrist control, just your wrists, right? Get that going like that. One of the beautiful thing about brushes is that back in the day, when I started playing brushes, I just always had a pair of them in my work bag. And during lunch at work, what I would do was literally just play on the bench or play on an old telephone book. You can literally do anything like that. Hello, Chantel. I'm live at the moment. Would you like to join in? Oh, I've got an audience tonight. I have Alexi over there. I've got Chantel here. Mark's bombed the set with our Pink Panther references. Oh, I'm not alone. So what happens is I'm doing brush work. And what happens is when you're doing this, it's all wrists, you see. So when I'm doing things like this, wrist work. The easiest way to do it, if you don't have a pair of brushes, is to simply place sticks on your lap or on a pillow. Like that, like so, you see. So what happens is you've got your wrists. That's what happens there. Now, what happens with the wrists is you want to be able to essentially be pliable. It's not like vice-like. Alexi, it's not like vice-like, like that, if you know what I mean. There you go. And so what happens is you actually work it up and down. Up and down, up and down. And there you go. So one of the things about this is that you have the vertical and the horizontal, you see, and you work your angles and you've got your wrist. So brushes are fantastic for that. You get a good feel. Like that, so on. Rim shots are great too. Tim Colopy, there you go. So because what happens is you can practice your rim shots without going deaf and all that. Susie's with us now. My God, the set is getting bombed like crazy. Hello, Susie. There you go. Love is in the air. I don't know how I got around. There it is there, see? Wrists. Brushes are great. Okay, that's what we've got. That's what you've got there, you see? So what happens is, now I'm going to go to the next step, because we've got our wrists there. And then what we have now is I'm going to go to mallets, and what we have is finger control. And what you've got there is the Gladstone Technique. A lot of you know about that. And what happens now is I can't call it wrist control because my wrists aren't moving so much. And what goes on with this is when I play really softly, what goes on is that, you see, it's just taps with the wrist like that. Do you see? Can you see that there? So what happens is, that's usually, and the winner is, now Simon's not crashing the set. Oh my Lord, I have the whole audience here. There you go. And what goes on is that you see that the wrists aren't moving. You see, really, it's finger control. Now it's attributed to Billy Gladstone, the very famous teacher, and he was the house drummer for Radio City Music Hall for so many decades. And what would happen is that would be, you know, Radio City Music Hall proudly presents Frank Sinatra. You know, that kind of thing. And what that is that would be Billy Gladstone in the background. And he had a wonderful technique for press rolls, finger control like this. And what happens is it's really, you know, the sound of one hand clapping, quote Bart Simpson and Zen and everything else. And so what happens is you get that going, and you get that. And there you have it there. So when you're using mallets and whatnot, that's where all this comes from. And you don't want to really slap away. You don't want to go like that or anything like that. You want to be able to get a smooth build. Okay? Some people call it warming the cymbal. You see? Look at that. Do you want me to make that something? And there it is there. You see? That's what you've got. Then you have the whip, the whip stroke. Okay. Whipping post. I always talk about that. Sorry about that. Whipping. Sanford Moeller. Whip, 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 whip. You see, it's like that. You see? So you get. See that whip there? Now, what goes on with this is that you can start to bring it down like angles, if you know what I mean. So that's what goes on there. when you're doing traditional grip, did you notice that I was sort of vipping with the right hand and I was Gladstoning with the left? Okay, so always beware of anyone who sort of goes, I only use Moeller technique or anything like that, because it's a cohesive whole. How I think of it is like a Venn diagram. You start off with your wrists, first circle, and then the second circle would be the finger control. You get your fingers together, and then you bring in the vip and all that, the whip stroke. And with that, it's like like a triangular circle kind of thing. So you can have Moeller and finger control, Moeller and Gladstone. You can have all wrist, or you could have all fingers, that kind of thing. But, really, it's the whole lot, sort of thing. So that's what goes on. Now, when you get your fingers going, let's start talking about all the different kinds of things that we can do. Now, one of the things that dear old Harold, said in my very first lesson was, son, you've got 3 kinds of ways to hit a drum. And what it is you've got a single tap, so on, you've got a double tap, tap and a rebound, and then you have a press, often known as a buzz or a multiple bounce roll. And then what happens is, let's talk about the 3 of them. When you're doing a single stroke roll, it's the first lesson ever. One after the other. Then you get your double stroke roll. Now when you're doing double stroke rolls, it's 2 gears, right? Now this is basic stuff, and I'm going to move on very quickly. What happens with this is that when you're doing it at a slow clip, what goes on is that you're actually starting to, or you're actually using 2 single taps, right? Right, left, left. But then there's a gear change. Slow to fast. Still single. And double. There it is, you see. What happens then is you have a multiple bounce, you see. So now, I've always found that the press roll, if we're going to talk about the press roll a bit, works a little bit in reverse to everything else, because what goes on is when you're wanting to start playing a single stroke roll, first lessons ever, of course the first thing you want to do is go as fast as you can. Whatever. But what happens is when you start learning a press roll, you do it slowly. And really, the quality of a press roll is really how you can get a continuous sound with the sticks working as slow as possible, right? So I might be doing crotchets here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Whenever you see this, that's called a scratch roll, okay? The technical term when I was coming up, when the old timers, all the old jazzers and the old marching dudes, that's called a scratch roll. And the old timers used to give it a technical name. They used to call it shithouse. Okay, so you got to watch it. So with all that, you see, so don't get shithouse. You want to be able to nice even press roll. That last little bit I did there is something that I did the other week called the cod liver oil, made famous by Ed Shaughnessy of the Johnny Carson Tonight Show band with Doc Severinsen. I try and yell out as many names as I can so you can go off and check them out. And what goes on with that is it's a press, then a double, then a single, then a double, press, double, single, double, and press, double, single, double, press, double, single, double, press. There it is there, you see, so that's what goes on. There you go. And so that's what you get from that. That's the cod liver oil. I've talked about that at length, and I will continue to do so that you can get an idea of the dynamics. When you're doing a press roll, you've got a certain tone, doubles, certain tone, singles, certain tone. There it is there. And that is the cod liver oil, okay? That's the press. Not enough is spoken about the press roll. What happens is that what you can have is the general way of thinking about it is that you have open rolls and closed rolls. Now, when I did all my time at the Essendon Band and we do all the marches and stuff, usually what would happen is that I'd get the situation of playing outside. Now, one of the things, this maybe some of you might know about this by playing in outdoors, and especially if you're marching. If you're doing an Anzac Day march, what will happen is that you're playing your... And that's all well and good, and that's fine. And has anyone ever got that feeling like you're marching down, right? You're marching down the street, and then you get to the corners, you know, like the corner of Swanson Street and Collins Street, and the sound disappears because what happens is it's all echoing off the buildings. You know, it's something wonderful about doing a rim shot. Tim Colopy, I love you, mate. I'm just having a laugh. And what happens is, what goes on with that is that that you can hear it bounce back, and it's oh wonderful. I'm in my element. Wow, natural reverb, all that. And what happens then is that as soon as you hit the intersection, the sound just disappears and everything goes flat. And it's a really interesting conundrum. So when you're actually marching for a band, you're the timekeeper. You're marching. You know, dear old Ron, the band leader, Ronnie Ruth, used to be on my side with the woof, woof, with the bass drum, all that. And, you know, and then the band would lose it. You know, everyone in the front row would go, where'd the beat go? You know, and that's why I'd have to drum a little hard out, you know, that kind of thing. But when we do the same material indoors, what would happen, I'd go from an open roll, meaning all double strokes, big and broad, so on. You'd have to belt it out, you know, if you're one of the only ones there. You know, if you've got 8 drummers in a row or something like that, you can take it a bit easy. But I've done one where I was the only snare drummer once. Whack! You really have to have a crack. Okay, I'm getting told that there's a beer waiting for me downstairs somewhere. No worries, Simon. Anyway, so what happens is that you've got your outdoors and you've got to be big and broad, right? But when you're inside, we used to do the naturalization ceremonies and things like that. You'd have to be... We play exactly the same material, but... Now, the funny thing about this is that when you're dealing with the notation of open and closed rolls, up until 20 years ago, it was all pretty much the same. Now, 20 years in the great scheme of things, when you're thinking about music notation being sort of, 800 years old, 20 years is nothing. So what happens is it's the crotchet, if you like. Let's just call it a crotchet with a stem, and you'd have 3 slashes through it. Now, the 3 slashes represents tails of your note, so three 3 tails means it's a 32nd note. Okay. But what would happen is then you nuance it for open or closed. Open simply means double strokes, and closed means presses. But you had the one note, so it was one size fits all, you see. So how should I do this? And it wasn't until about 20 years ago, and my first edition of my notational software, which I use Sibelius, for those who know what the Sibelius music notation program is. My first edition didn't have the Z through it. And then my newest one, which I have to lease and all this sort of business, has Zs there. Oh, you see, so that's how new it is. You see, so what happens is that if you've got, say, a crotchet with a stem and then a Z through it, it means presses. You've got to press. That's what goes on, you see. So there's your press, double, single, double, press, double, single. There it is. There you are. Thank you very much. So that's on that style of things. Now, let's look at what we are. I'm doing all right, I think. And there we have it. So that's the cod liver oil. I've mentioned it many times, and I will again, sort of thing. But that's a very famous rudiment where it's not part of the past rudiments or anything like that. But what happens is it's a great exercise by one of the great drummers, great jazz drummers and Tonight Show drummer dudes in Ed Shaughnessy. Look him up. That's why I name all the names. And there's the press. And it works in reverse. You don't have to play. And it's a funny thing because when you're actually... Now Tim's on the set. If you're going to press, you've got to work out what rate you're playing at. So if you're going to do jazz, you'd press in the same style or in the same rate as your main thing. So if you're playing triplets, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a, press accordingly. One and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3. Now, triplets, wrist control, double, press. Satin doll. Best great piece of tin, that one. I sang. I'm so sorry I scared you. I'm very sorry about that, but hey. I'm putting myself off now. That's what the... Now, the single stroke roll, finger control, back to H. Hey son, you get on the practice pad, you do that, you've got to watch with the second hand, yeah, put it there. I want you to go through the metronome, the 3 rudiments, both right and left hand start, minute non-stop. So it's 6 minutes on each tempo marking. In the old-fashioned tick, 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 would go up in increments of 8. So there I was. It was like the Zen drum lesson. I fall off the back of the stool. Said, "Where's Harold gone?" And all that. But it was like a Zen lesson sort of thing. So you'd sit there. You'd be trying to go. Sing a song. something like that. Pipeline, yeah, wasn't it? Yeah. So that's what happens there. And what would happen, you just sort of, that's your endurance, you see, that's what would happen. But one of the things that you want to think about, they're endurance rudiments, right, when you're dealing with things like that. But then you want to think about your reflex, you know, just a flick. You know? Roughs are any number of strokes with single taps, and rolls are any number of strokes with double taps, you see. So what starts to happen, you want to flick. So what I'm doing there is I'm actually doing a 4-stroke rough. In the 40 pass rudiments called a single stroke 4. They decided to change some of the names back in the 80s, all that. But it's simply however many strokes. So if it's a 9-stroke rough, it's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But then you relate it down to your notes, whether you're using triplets or semiquavers or whatever it might be, and then you work it. So what I was doing there was a 4-stroke rough. But underneath down here in the Netherlands, down there, is I'm putting in a 3-stroke rough, which is just a right, left, right with the double kick here, right, left, right. So if I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yes, Gina, Lola, Bridget, but it really is like you're doing a little bit like double bass drum grace notes. You see, if it's sometimes when you're doing, say, flams, drags, and then you can have the 4-stroke. Da 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 da. Roadrunner, isn't it? No. Who's the mouse? Who's the Bugs Bunny mouse? Quick, Alexi, come on. Ah! I'll put it in later on. I'll put it in like a little note. But what happens is you get Speedy Gonzales. That's who it was. Yeah. That's Speedy Gonzales. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could treat it like a septuplet, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So on if you wanted to. But more more often than not, you can actually treat it a little bit like 3 grace notes, and then a roll like a minim, like 1, 2, you know, like that, but with the 3 slashes, the aforementioned 3 slashes, so you could get. I'm in love with that. I should have used that one. Now, what happens with this is we're all the way back to Gladstone Technique, because it is the science of the tap. What a dickhead. Anyway, but what it does is it gives you the breathing space. If you put that in, and that's what goes on there. Now, that's a reflex. So you're getting that in. And so on. And I'm playing a little bit longer. So you could call them 9-stroke roughs if you like, or whatever it might be, if you're doing a whole semi-brief. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Watch the wrists fall off, and so on it goes, you see. So it's a real exercise in, that's the endurance kind of deal. But when you're actually playing quickly, it's actually a simple flick. Now I better check, I better see what we're going. Yes, I'm over, of course I am. So I'm going to start wrapping it up now. But what goes on, I hope you get something out of that. I've done everything on the page there, my little notes. Now, yesterday was kind of a sad day because Tim Bogert passed away, and God bless him, he's 76, same age as when Dad passed away. And what I did last night, I put up a post on the old Facechookery last night about Beck Bogert and Apis, my favourite guitar player there, Jeff Beck, as temperamental as he is. But what goes on is that, of course, I was listening to one of my, I was going, whoa, who's that Carmen Apis, right, sort of thing. Next he's with Rod Stewart and all that, but they both, Tim Bogert and Carmen Apis, were like that as a rhythm section. And they started out with Vanilla Fudge, and they, you know, like there's a lot of stuff with Led Zeppelin and, you know, lots of goings on. Something about a mud shark somewhere there or whatever, but rock and roll folklore. And what goes on here is I got to because I've got the albums, as a tip of the hat, I put them on, and I'd forgotten just how good Carmen Apis was, whatever, and some of the stuff he was doing. And it's this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. You see? And then, you know, but that's the Moeller technique there, as applied to paradiddles. Can't get a Facechook live without a paradiddle for free. And what goes on now is I'm going to wrap the show up. But go off, get onto YouTubes, and do yourself a favour and have a listen to Beck Bogert and Apis. They would explode on stage. You know, like comparable. On the way to Who Live at Leeds and Deep Purple Made in Japan, you know, things like that, regarded as some of the classic live albums. Their live album, which was really only released in Japan, and I got my hands on a Japanese pressing when I was about 17. That was a long time ago, jeez. And what would happen was just that they just exploded. They weren't around for long. They exploded. He just left. Really? Yeah, he left. That's an in-joke. So what happens is, tonight, is trying to get inside, underneath, over, over, under, sideways, down. Isn't that Yardbirds? Inside the tapping, Z-tapping, you see, like that. Okay, finger control, all that. You've got wrist control, back to the brushes. You've got the combination of all three, Moeller technique, and I went into presses, okay? I don't think the press roll is taught nearly enough and nearly as well as it needs to be. like even when you see the chart for the 40 pass rudiments, it just says press roll, and it's just got a note with a Z in it, and that's it. Come on, you can do better than that, especially when it's such a big tradition in marching bands and pipe bands and stuff like that. It ain't going away. And for so many people, it's really just, you know, the typical, can I have a drum? And the winner is for the Upper Malarkey Hotel Chook raffle. The number is 43. Come on down, Robbo, you won your chook. And all that. That's all it is. But there's a lot more to it. So, without further ado, my name is Chris Quinlan, and once again, live from the Alex Theatre. There's lots of things you could tell tonight, couldn't you? The set got bombed. I love it, though. You can tell I love it. So there it is. I'm out of here. It was the mad scientist, the science of the tap. Insert evil laughter here. All right, I'm off.
I will let you off this time with just a warning.
Thank you, Monsieur Argent.
But you must get yourself a proper license.
First thing tomorrow.
Try to do something about your filthy Minki.